Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode here at YASHAV Ministry with Sarai. Thank you for being here. If you like the content that you have on our channel, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them on the comment section down below. Also share. This week we're going to talk about Torah portion LECH LECHA. But before we get started, we're going to do the blessing of the Torah. We're going to bless the word of Elohim. So it says, Blessed Adonai, the Blessed One, blessed is Adonai, the Blessed One, now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our Elohim, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us and sanctified us, and separated us from the people, and given us your Torah. Amen. Thank you, Elohim. So, this week, like I said, we're going to talk about Torah portion LECH LECHA, which means go forth, or go forth your country, right? And so this Torah portion talks about Abraham, right? This is the introduction into Abraham or Abram right now. And so we have seen the chain of events from creation, right? Genesis 1, when we understand the blueprint of God, the purpose of creation and how everything was created, right? And we understand that there was one creator, and that was Elohim, right? Yod He Vav He, or Adonai. And so then we understand the function that each thing was given, every creation, right? The moon, the stars, right? Earth, every living being, seed, tree, even men, right? And women. Each of them were given a function and a purpose in creation, right? God gave them a specific role to play, right? And so man was given the opportunity to basically take care of God's creation, right? He was the commander-in-chief of what was given, which was the whole Garden of Eden. And he was supposed to expand that all over the world. But the disobedience, right? The curiousness of Adam and Eve, of knowing the knowledge of good and evil, send them in a track of basically they got cursed. They cursed one another and their disobedience. And so now it became where it was two aspect of men, right? There was men that were willing to worship Elohim, right, which represented Abel, and then there was Cain, right, which rebelled against his brother because of his imperfections, right, or his lack of honor and honoring Elohim and giving his best to Elohim, right? And so we can see the crumbling of creation and men having a tug of war with emotions and wanting to have their own sets of views and having control of creation, but forgetting that the creator of everything had already given man a function in his creation. And so now that we understand the consequences of disobedience, right, we understood last week of Noah, and we understood the importance of being a just and righteous man, right? Noah was found just, righteous, and he walked with Elohim, right? And so he was given the opportunity of surviving, right? And through Noah, and in Noah's story, we see a creation, a new creation, right? Because everything that Elohim had created till that moment, he decided to destroy, because he said that he was disappointed basically on what had come of men, right? And in that disappointment and in that chaos, one man was found just, and so that was Abraham. And from Abraham, we see a trickle-down effect, right, all the way into Abraham. And right, so we have been understanding the cultural aspect, right, the ancient Near Eastern concept of the times of Noach, the times of Adam and Abel, right? And we have understood the mindset that these men had, right? Because for us to understand the biblical stories, we have to understand the biblical times, We cannot try to implement our own opinions and our own sets of beliefs into a text that has been established historically, right? If you can prove it. And so we have an understanding that now. We get to Lekh Lecha, right? Chapter 12. Right? It's from chapter 12 to chapter 17, if I'm not mistaken. And so here is the introduction of Abraham. And so Abraham is a descendant, right? Or from the genealogy of Noah. And so Abraham had two brothers. Abraham's father was Terah. Terah was on its way from his homeland, right? On his way to Canaan, and he stopped. And so where he stopped is where Abraham's story begins, right? Because Terah dies in this land, and then Abraham is left to pick up where his father left off, and is on his way to Canaan, which eventually becomes a promised land. And so chapter 12 says the following. Now the Lord said to Abraham, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house, the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all families of the earth will be blessed. This is very important, especially for my youth that watch this for tomorrow's class. In you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Right? So Abraham went forth, right, as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran, right? So the town that his father Terah stopped in was Haran, right, on his way to Canaan. Abraham took Sarai his wife and Lot his nephew and all their possessions which they had accumulated and the persons which they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. And Abraham passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanites was then in the land. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Then he proceeded from there to the mountain of the east of Bethel and pitched a tent, right, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abraham journeyed on and continued towards the Negev. And now there was a famine in the land. So Abraham went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for this famine was severe in the land. And it came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, see now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. And when Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me. But they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that if it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on account of you. And it came about when Abram came into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore he treated Abram well for her sake, and gave him sheep, oxen, donkeys, and male and female servants, and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord struck the Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because Sarai and Abram's wife. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, she's my sister, so that I took her for my wife? And now then, here is your wife, take her and go. Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him. So here the opening verses for Abraham are very interesting, because he is given a blessing, right? He's given a promise as well. And so we're going to analyze that with the context of a little bit of context of the ancient Near East. So this is the Sunderman Bible, and so it says here to call Abraham, right? It says that Elohim told Abraham to leave your country, right? To leave his country and his people and his father's household, right? So it's a very tough decision for Abraham to leave everything he knows and everything he believes in, right? So it says here, why does God ask Abram to leave this behind, right? So it says one reason may be that it is by these three connections that one related to a deity, right? So here's going to start identifying how in ancient times they will identify with the gods, right, or the beings that they worship, right? And it says the gods one worship tended to be national, right, or a city god or country. This, you can see it mainly in Egypt. Egypt had a god for each village or town that they had. Then there was the clan god, right, the family, right, and then there was the ancestral gods. That is, ancestors who have taken a place in the divine world, right, from the father's household. Right, so these are the two or three main aspects and of gods and how they related and connected to the deity. And it says, as Yahweh served the ties of Abram and who have had with other deities, he then filled the resulting void as the only God Abram will need, right? So Elohim was basically telling Abraham not only to leave his family, his country, and then his household, but he was basically telling Abraham to leave his culture of worshiping other gods, or at least leave the land in which these practices were done. And he had to believe and have faith that by doing this he will be protected and will be taken care of by Yahweh, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, right, in his quest to, by faith, obey Elohim. So it says here, personal God in Mesopotamia. So this is the concept that Abraham is starting to assimilate with. It says around 2000 BC, when Abram's stories should probably be placed, an interesting development was taking place in Mesopotamia. The rise of the concept of one personal God. So they had one God that they personally believed in. In this period, people began to see themselves in a personal relationship with a family God who undertook the divine sponsorship of the family. As a result, most families' worship was directed to this God, with the expectation that protection and guidance will be provided. When someone senses that a God has taken his family under his protective wing, the expression used is that they have acquired a God. Right, so once this family understood that they were being protected by this divine being, they would unconditionally understand that once they accept it, they will, by faith, understand that this being was protecting them. Right, they will provide for them and they will direct them in the correct manner. Right, and so it says, in some texts, this seems merely an expression of personified luck, or a personification of self. Terminology used to express this relationship was that of a parent who had created or engendered the individual. Given this background, it can be considered likely that when God began interacting with Abram, the patriarch would have thought of himself as acquiring a God, entering a relationship with a divine being who will become the family patron deity. So this is why we understand how Elohim's interaction with Abraham is so much of a friend, right? And so, because Abraham eventually lets Elohim know, how do I know that you're going to give me this, right? And Abraham also asks, how are you going to bless me if I don't have a descendant, right? Somebody that can take over and basically fulfill the blessing that you're giving me. All right, so Abraham in a way doesn't question Elohim, but he is basically asking him based on his culture, he's saying, how do I know that I will be protected under your wing? Right? And so that's where we are with Abraham here. It says here, in Mesopotamia, these God came to be known as the God of the fathers, right? As a description also used in Genesis, right? So in all these texts, right, and it's something that we say, right, especially in our congregations, right, the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And so it is a cultural aspect that was practiced in Abraham's time. And so it's very interesting. It says here, a personal God was not viewed as the only God, but was the God most directly involved with the family, and the one that was the focus of most of the routine religious activity. Devotion to this deity was extended in the family from generation to generation, and as such was inherited rather than chosen. Though the major gods could on occasion serve as personal gods, more typically a personal god was a lower echelon deity in terms of rank within the pantheon. Only in Israel did a personal god eventually become the god of a nation, right? So here is basically explaining how it's making a comparison or a distinction, right, of how, right, it is a similar mindset to what Abraham's time and the people in Abraham's time worship personal gods, but Elohim is trying to work with Abraham, trying to say, okay, I'm going to be your personal God, and I will be the God or the Elohim of your family and the generation that comes after you, but I'm going to make the statement that I am the one and true God, okay? And that's the statement that Elohim makes with Abraham. And so it says here, it continues with, in the Sunderland Bible says, verse 2 says, I'll make you a great nation, right? This offer is unique in the ancient world, right? One can certainly find offers by deities to make someone a king, or to be prosper, or to prosper their line, or even a promise that a particular individual will have many offsprings. But the prospect that individual will grow into a great nation is not broached in any other literature from the ancient world, right? So here we start seeing the distinctions, right? And something that I learned is that God is not competing, right? In my mind, I thought that Elohim was competing or was trying to make a statement to the other gods, but in reality, Elohim is just making or clarifying to Abraham, right? To the people, right? Elohim is trying to clarify to those that want to follow him, right? Elohim is not worried about those that don't follow him, because his sole focus is on those that are willing to bring forth his kingdom, right? And so Elohim is not gonna get distracted trying to prove something to somebody that doesn't want, or is not willing to understand, or is not open enough to embrace him. And so here Elohim is letting Abraham know that unlike the other gods, or the personal gods, right, he will make him a great nation. And that promise is something that is not found in any ancient literature promises given to other kings, right? And so it says, and I will make you make your name great, right? This offer also stands in contrast to the desire of the city and tower builders in Genesis 11, right? So in Genesis 11, we see the story of Babel, right? And so here they implement that they want their names to be known, right? And so that was one of the purposes of building this great tower, that they wanted to be close to the gods and wanted their name to be great, basically exalt themselves not only equally to the gods but over them, right? And here it says that they had embarked on an initiative to establish their name, whereas here it is Yahweh initiative that will result in Abram's name being magnified, right? So Elohim has chosen this man, right, based on his obedience, to magnify his name over those that try to implement and impose their will, right, and implement their own power to exalt their own names, right? It says every aspect of this offer explains the ways that Abram's name will be magnified because a person's name is exalted through remembrance, right? All peoples will call Abram their ancestor and will recognize him as the one through whom their blessing has come. So this is very interesting because Judaism, right, and even in Islam, right, they have an understanding and a belief that Abraham is their father, right? And so it resonates till today, right? So it's not a coincidence that Abraham is believed to be the father of many nations. It says though the agreement between the Lord and Abraham or Abram is not termed a covenant until chapter 15 verse 18, the first articulation of the general terms of the covenant occurs in verses 1 through 3, right? Though the monotheistic worship of Yahweh is a clear distinctive for Israel in contrast to the peoples of ancient world, more distinctive yet is the covenant relationship between Elohim and his people. Israel's self-identity, here viewed of history, her belief in her destiny, her understanding of the attributes of Elohim, and her understandings of her obligations to Elohim, right? Articulated in the Torah, and the basis of the prophetic institutions all derive directly from the covenant, right? So there is a legal binding document that proves the legality of the true God, right? It's not based on words or establishments by men. The creator of heaven and earth has established an eternal covenant that cannot be changed, right? And this is the proof of his faithfulness. It says each of these areas, despite the existence of similarities with the rest of the ancient world, the covenant marks the departure and underlies the uniqueness of Israel. Elohim in the ancient world may have been viewed as a personal God who undertook the protection of the family, but they did not make covenants, right? So here it makes a distinction, right? So they might have seen, right, the God as the personal God or the family, right, God that protected the family, but that God did not make a covenant with those families, right? The God was there temporarily or was there until the family decided to not have the God. So the covenant targets the most essential elements of the identity in the value system of the ancient Near East. Land was connected to one's survival and livelihood and political identity. Family linked the past, present, and future, offering one most basic sense of identity, more so than self, inheritance fixed on one place in the family, and ensure that the generations past will remember in the present and future. When Abram gave up his place in his father's household, he forfeited his security. And he was putting his survival, his identity, his future, and his security in the hands of Elohim. Right? So here we're introduced to a different aspect of what Elohim wants from us. Right? Abraham, by faith, left everything he knew and owned, right, in his inheritance, right, what his father gave him, what his family had acquired. He gave it all away and left it to go into the inheritance that this new, right, in that moment, personal God, right, who will become the Elohim that will give him a covenant, right, that will establish him as the father of many nations, and that will give him a descendants, right. Through him comes the one seed, right. And so we understand that by faith Abraham did these things, and we find this in the book of Hebrews, right, in the New Testament. It says, the New Testament, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, says, and it summarizes basically what we have read, right, where we are, right, in our quest to finding out what does God want from us, right. It says, Now by faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of the things not seen. For by it the men of old gain approval. By faith we understand that the world we prepare by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. Right? By faith Abel offered to God a better sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained the testimony that he was righteous. Elohim testified about his gifts, and through faith, though he is dead, he still speaks. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he will not see death, and he was not found because Elohim took him up, for he obtained the witness that before he was being taken up, he was pleasing Elohim. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. By faith Noah, being warned by Elohim about things not yet seen, in reverence prepared an ark for the salvation of his household, by which he commanded the world, and became an heir of the righteous, which in according to faith. By faith Abraham, right, when he was called, obeyed by going out to place which he was to receive for an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he lived as an alien in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, fellow heirs of the same promise. For he was looking for the city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is Elohim. Right? So, what does it tell us? That these men that we have been studying for the last couple of Torah portions, they had prepared a foundation in obedience to what has not been seen yet. Right? We're blessed to understand that these stories give us a testimony of the mistakes that were made, and the right decisions that were made by these just men. We don't see the future, but through the commandments, through the order and the structure and the foundations of Elohim, even though we don't see the future, we might be establishing great blessings for the next generation to come. Right? So for this teaching, what I'm going to give you guys before tomorrow's class is that by faith the patriarchs established a foundation that has led us to many kings, right? Whether they be good or bad, right? But eventually it led us to a Mashiach, right? Yeshua, and now we're here. And everything was done by faith and obedience to Elohim. So it's better to be prepared now for what we might not see than to be confronted by the truth and not be prepared. And so please take your time to honor Elohim and look for what does Elohim want from you and what does Elohim require of you, so that you are able to honor him in truth, right? And through his foundation. Okay? Have a great week. Shavuot Tov. Shabbat Shalom.